Hi guys, first of all, Happy New Year to all of you. I hope you have had a superb 2020 and I hope you are all extremely excited and energized for what is awaiting ahead in 2021. I am at least. I did some calculations yesterday, so did a thread on my Twitter for a couple of days ago where I said that my return goal for 2021 is approximately 30%. 30% is not much relative to the 105% I did in 2020. However, I think we're going into a bit of a more difficult year in terms of the environment. We won't have these huge runners as we had in 2020. So I've set my expectations to 30% return on investment in 2021. That being said, I just did some calculations last night for Q1 and my expectations for my different stocks in my portfolio. And with those expectations in mind, it showed me a return of 47% just by Q1. So that, of course, is not really fluctuating with the 30% year on year I'm expecting. So let's see how things go. I think I'm a bit conservative regarding 30% potentially, but hopefully we're able to kick it off extremely well in 2021. So today I want to talk a little bit about opportunity cost and sort of being able to operate in a market where there are opportunities everywhere and where you will be exposed to opportunities every single day as you're following people that will advise you or recommend you to buy into stocks every single day. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about what is opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is, from a microeconomical perspective, what we are talking about is the equation of the return you get when you have the return on an opportunity you did not choose minus the opportunity you chose. So basically, what you're saying here is you are taking the return of the opportunity you didn't choose relative to the opportunity you actually chose. And why this is an interesting element is that it always makes you able to actually calculate your return in the positions you're in relative to the positions you're not in. So a classical phrase I like to use, and that I have told several people and also people on my own age, because we as a generation are just more impatient than quite a few of the elder generations, and that is there will always be another one. So even if you gave me $1 billion, I would be able to put all of them in the market because I have that many opportunities that I want to be in. That also means that if you have $10,000 or if you have $1,000, it will be even more difficult, especially as I recommend to have a specific size on positions so that you don't dilute yourself too much with sort of with fees regarding trading or even in terms of currency. So there will always be another one, and I think it's a good rule of thumb to have, that there will always be another case. And that means that, let's say that you have a portfolio, you have 10 stocks in your portfolio, you're on Twitter, and all of a sudden Philip Gunst is tweeting that there is a new case in his portfolio. The first thing people would likely do, or at least sort of the human brain will automatically activate itself, and sort of based on your bias or relation to that specific individual, you will likely say, I want to be a part of that stock as well. So let's say you have 10 stocks in your portfolio, you're 100% allocated, and all of a sudden you get a new stock recommended that you want to be a part of. So how are you going to sort of approach that scenario? What I have been doing for the last 5 years is that when I don't have any capital on the sideline, you don't have any available cash, and you get a new position recommended and you are super hyped about it, and that's a classical scenario, is that you get hyped about new things. So what you need to do here is to, first of all, take a deep breath and sort of understand, okay, we have a new case here, we have 10 cases in our portfolio, we need to do some sort of ranking. And what is important here is that you will automatically be biased towards the new case because it's new, it's super exciting. So what you want to do here is to take the opportunity cost calculation and sort of say, okay, what is my expected return over the course? It depends on your time horizon once again, but let's say over the next 3 months. What is your expected returns on all of these positions you have in your portfolio relative to the new case that you have been recommended? And of course, always do your own due diligence. Let's say I post a case on my on my Twitter, and I say I expect to be able to gain 100% on this position during January. Good example could be New Placer Dome Gold. That is a case that I expect 100% return during January. Be critical regarding that. You shouldn't take everything for granted that people say regarding returns. So from my perspective, you're creating these calculations, or at least put up these equations for every single case that you're in already. So the 10 cases you have in your portfolio, and then you are sort of comparing it to the expected return on the new case you have been proposed. So that is sort of the way you should approach it, and not just sell out. A good example is that I have seen a good example is Altamira Gold. So Altamira Gold is one of my core positions in my portfolio. Super low volume stock. I think they have a market cap of approximately 20 million Canadian dollars. However, whenever I have recommended a new stock since joining Altamira, it has been quite viable from the volume in Altamira that some of you guys on my Twitter is selling out Altamira to sort of join the new case. That could be Adventus Mining, I joined recently. It could be New Placer Gold. Some of these stocks that you sort of want to be part of to sort of hit the FOMO and hit the craze right at the moment that the tweet gets out there. You're selling from your core positions without doing these calculations. So that is an extremely good rule of thumb, is to be careful with the hype and the FOMO. And don't get drawn by those people that say, okay, now I want to be in Kahoot. Kahoot will make 200% return in 2021. So I will just, look down at my list. What is the actual return right now? Okay, Maha has performed poor throughout 3 months. I'm going to sell that one and then jump into Kahoot immediately. However, why is Maha down? So you need to do these considerations. Why is Maha down? What is the expectations within the next 3 months? What are the catalysts going into 2021? So you need to put some thought into this without just jumping back and forth. And I think another phrase relative to there will always be another one. Another phrase is cut your losses and let your winners run. And I think throughout the last 5 years that I've been on the stock market, that phrase is to some extent right and to some extent wrong. So the reason why it's right is that when I'm looking down at my return for 2020, the poorest performing stocks in 2020 were also the ones that had the poorest performance in 2019. Or at least the stocks that when I entered 2020 were the stocks with the lowest actual return unrealized return in my portfolio. It will be Elsinova, it will be Nickel Mountain Resources, it will be Patriot One Technologies. So if I had cut my losses in the beginning of 2020, I would have been better placed for whatever position I had put the money into instead. So that also comes back to, even though you are down 80 or 90% on a stock. So a good example is Nickel Mountain Resources, the former Interfox Resources that I had in my portfolio. I only have that in my portfolio to sort of remind me of the bad decisions I made when I made that investment back in 2015, and I'm going to do a separate video on that experience, but that is sort of a motivator for me to have that in my portfolio, and I can look at it every single day and tell me I will never do that again. And I think that's fine, but I'm down. I think it's 90% or something, 90% negative return on Nickel Mountain Resources. I think, let's say we're down, a $100,000 position in Nickel Mountain Resources, you're down 90%, so there's only $10,000 left. Those $10,000, a good example is Cabral Gold. We're up 300% or so on Cabral Gold. Those $10,000 would be worth $40,000 now if you just position them in something else by the beginning of 2020. So it also comes down to, of course, cut your losses and let your winners run is correct in that sense, that you are able to actually win or gain your lost capital in new cases. However, let your winners run is not necessarily correct. True, there will be times where you need to just forget them, put them in the drawer, and forget all about that specific case. That being said, I think from a risk management point of view, you need to also take some profit when they're on the table. You don't want to leave too much profit on the table, and it is a rule of thumb that I have created over the last 2-3 years maybe, is that okay, after 50% return, we are taking 25% of the position off the table. When we are up 100%, we take an additional 25% off the table. When we are up 200%, we take an additional. So again, back to entry strategy and sort of strategy in general. I'll also make a separate video on that at some point. You need to have a strategy when you're investing. And a good way of doing that is to take risk off the table, get your profits home, at least some of it, and then you're able to reallocate those profits into a new position. And I think that is sort of the engine you want to create. So cut your losses and let your winners run is correct to some extent. You need to cut your losses, especially if the case has changed. So you don't want to be too stubborn regarding your DD. So a good example is patient one. I may have been a bit too stubborn regarding when I sort of cut my loss on that investment. However, you don't want to be too stubborn. You don't want to be too proud about the DD you have made, because you may be wrong. You may have overseen something that makes the case worse than it actually is. However, let your winners run, yes, to some extent. At least some of the position, you need to let that run to see where it ends. Good example is Good Food. We sold 25% of the position Good Food around 12 Canadian dollars. I'm going to let the rest run for now. Then maybe take some profits again at 15 and 20. But I'm going to let something run for the entire time. The last thing I want to talk a bit about is sort of jumping too much between positions, back and forth all the time. First of all, you need to have fees in mind. So every time you're selling, and every time you're buying, at least at quite a few of the Danish trading platforms, you are paying a fee. You also need to have currency in mind. So every time you're positioning between currencies, there's also, unless you're very good at the sort of doing these currency fluctuations, you will also have a risk on those. So jumping between positions back and forth all the time is not a good strategy at all. I understand that it is attractive whenever you're presented to a new case. It is attractive to sort of be drawn to the potential gain that is in that specific case. There will be some upfront upside in terms of being able to hit that FOMO and sort of create a quick return. But often you won't sell after that quick return. So a good example is my adding zone tweets. You're able to probably make between 3 and 10% on those buys immediately within the next 5-6 hours, maybe a couple of days. But often we don't sell, at least I don't sell after those 5 to 10% gain on the adding zone tweets. So jumping between positions too much is not a good way of doing things. It's not a good way of approaching investing. And back to our first point in this video with opportunity cost. You need to sit down and create these calculations. What is your expected return on the position you're in right now relative to the expected return on the new position, and sort of maybe create a discount relative to the FOMO and the hype that you have in your body regarding this new position that will always be there. However, there will always be another one, and if you have rules of thumbs regarding how you want to approach specific investments and how you want to, for instance, approach 2021, good example of mine, I want to sort of cut down my emotions regarding stocks I'm not invested in. So I have a watch list of approximately 200 stocks. However, those 200 stocks, I think that the biggest emotional roller coaster I'm in when I'm looking down at those watch lists are often the feeling of not gaining the returns of the stocks I'm not in. So what is an example? C Limited. I've had C Limited on my watch list since 25 American dollars. Now it costs approximately $200. That's almost a 1,000% return I have missed. However, it won't gain you anything whatsoever to be hard on yourself by not taking those positions. And I think sort of a goal or ambition of mine in 2021 is to be less hard on myself regarding not taking these positions. You can't be all of them. As I said, even if you gave me $1 billion, I would be able to position every single penny of those. So you need to be selective. You need to be very strict in your approach and your way of sort of perceiving things. And then you need to not focus too much on the things that are not in your portfolio, but rather on the things that are in your portfolio. And as long as you have done your homework, you have done your due diligence, you have sort of created these calculations regarding, okay, what is my expected return on Maha Energy relative to my expected return on Kahoot? Okay, if my expected return on Kahoot that is not in my position is higher than Maha, then I should consider if it makes sense to maybe swap them at least over the time period that I expect Kahoot to overperform or outperform Maha Energy. That being said, I think there will always be this bias in the beginning of this new play being extremely exciting, and you also want to avoid that to some extent. So to wrap things up, opportunity cost is the cost or the outcome of the equation between the expected return on the stock you have chosen for your portfolio relative to the expected return or the outcome of the position that you have been proposed to or is not in your portfolio. There will always be another one. So even though it may be attractive to jump in every single case you're being proposed or recommended on Twitter, Facebook, whatever platform, even by your bank, your investment advisor in the bank, then you need to sort of understand the opportunity cost in the equation, because if you're not able to sort of put that equation up for yourself, then you will just jump back and forth between positions, which is not a good thing. Sort of have that as a rule of thumb. I don't want to jump too much between positions. So if you need to sell every time you need to enter a new position, then you maybe need to reconsider it another time. And then the last one, cut your losses and let your winners run, is correct to some extent. However, always risk manage and always take some profits off the table when they're there. Otherwise, you will end up as me with Interfox Resources, where I was up 350%, but now I'm down with a negative 90% return. So that was it for today, and thank you for listening in on this video 3 of my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe this video if you are into these complimentary videos to my Twitter. And also, if you're not following me on Twitter, please go and follow me on @GunsPhilip on Twitter. Thank you guys, and have a nice 2021.